Welcome to the Releasing Community podcast. I am Katja Törmänen, and me and Stephen Robert Carlson will be your hosts. And we'll be having guests talking about releasing, level releasing, gains, insights, etc. And our guest today is Kim Moriyama, and Kim is a transformational life and leadership coach who uses the Sedona Method to support her clients to untangle from their inner limitations so they can do what in their hearts they know they are meant to do and allow presence or beingness to be revealed in the process. Kim has used the Sedona Method to navigate life challenges and achieve her aspirations for 13 years and supports others with one-on-one and group coaching. And you can sign on Kim's free support calls, but we'll kind of come back to the website address later in the call. Welcome, Kim. Very lovely to have you here.
Oh, thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here to talk about one of my favorite things, releasing.
Exactly, yes. You said there that you had been doing this for 13 years, so would you tell me how did you find the Sedona Method and releasing?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, it found me. I was living in Durango, Colorado, and working with a healthcare practitioner named Vanessa Morgan.
Mhm.
And I was dealing with a lot of challenging life events, and I was having some pretty intense physical challenges too.
Mhm.
And she said at the end of our session, hey, there's something you might be interested in checking out. It's called the Sedona Method. And I've got this video. And I'm bringing two instructors, Tim McCavitt and Enrica James, to town for a workshop. And so we watched 10 minutes of the letting go video that Hale made. And I was like, that's it. Sign me up. I know this is going to help me. And so that next weekend, I attended Tim and Annie's workshop, and the rest is history. I knew it. I just knew it was what I needed to help me navigate the big challenges, probably what felt like the biggest life challenges I had ever faced up until that point.
Wow, so you really got a deep dive straight into the method.
Straight away. I had a Pilates studio at that time. So I was very much working with the body and helping other people do the same. And I had this little round ball. It was actually a cat toy that we used during some exercises. And I literally, instead of holding the pen and dropping the pen, I was walking around with this cat toy in my hand, giving myself permission to really feel what it was like to hold on. And then I'd be dropping the cat toy. And that really was, for me, as being so focused on the physicality of body and life, that was a really great way for me to experience releasing in the beginning. You know, not everybody does that work for, or they drawn to that, but as a movement person, very physical movement person, that was really, really helpful way to learn how to let go.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've been kind of averse to the physical side, and actually one of the things I've always liked in the Sedona Method is exactly the thing that it doesn't even tell us how to breathe or sit when we release. So it's lovely to hear you coming from the opposite side. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. I can relate to what you're saying, Kim, because for me, releasing is always, well, it's body focused actually. And you know, I think that a lot of people start off in their heads. Hale Dwoskin was talking about exactly this. He began as a head releaser. And maybe, Katja, is that kind of your your background?
Totally, yes.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, but for me, it really, it started in my head, I'll agree. But very quickly, I realized or began to experience things very much in the body. At first, I couldn't feel anything at all. And then over time, I really started feeling emotion in the body. And so when I'm working with people as a facilitator, very often I find the greatest releases come when we focus on somatic releasing. So
yeah, one of the things I love about the method is that I've noticed for myself, I've become more balanced, or maybe more aware of the different senses. So I feel more alive in general as a result of releasing, right? As I said, I started off really quite somatic and physical and visual, right? In terms of learning style is, people would say, primarily kinesthetic and visual learner, and auditory was my weakest, right? But in releasing, we ask questions.
Yes.
Right? So it's very auditory, right? So I went through this phase of listening to courses, right, or retreats that I attended. I'd be like listening. And so my auditory skills significantly increased as a result of releasing. And now it feels like there's facility, between all of these: visual, hearing, somatic. And of course, that's been a great benefit in many other realms of my life as well.
Yes, of course. So, what kind of practice you had? Kind of a retreat, mini retreat right away, or deep dive course? So how did you start utilizing it in your life?
Yes, after that workshop with Tim and Annie, I had a couple of questions that I would just read with myself. And then I recognized it was so helpful to listen. And there were different CDs that I was given. The Hale has that super course, right? And then there was additional courses. And I went through a phase where I think I attended every live retreat offered, for a couple of years, because I was just really hungry. There was a part of me that sometimes I'd even be driving to the retreat and saying, why am I going? And then I'd get there and I'd be like, oh, yes, this was ready to be released or untangled. And so attending live events, listening to the audios, there was a phase when my life was like, I was navigating some really difficult challenges in pretty much every level aspect of my life, like my health. I had some severe health challenges. I had big time business challenges. I had relationships that weren't sustainable, that were falling apart, that were a really big part of my life. So I was listening all the time, and then releasing partners, starting that facilitator training, all right, routine when Hale first started offering it, and then really releasing with other people was probably one of the most powerful catalysts to deepening releasing for me. I found that I actually really enjoyed asking the questions more than having the questions asked of me.
Wow. Yeah.
For whatever reason, I found great relief, actually, in being there to support another. I think, Hale talked about, and I think we've all experienced, like, right, when you're there for another person, like your stuff just gets put to the side. And I love how we set it up that when you have a releasing partner, you can check in and say, all right, how agitated are you? And whoever feels the most disturbance is the one that asks the questions first. And I love that. I just found that to be so empowering, right? That even though you are really agitated, you can still put that down and be there for another. And when you're doing that with releasing, something inside of you shakes loose too, And it's just so empowering.
Exactly.
I find everything about releasing to be very empowering.
Yeah, I can really relate to what you're talking about in terms of how you like to facilitate. You prefer to facilitate rather than be facilitated. And in sort of a joking way, I sometimes refer to myself as a selfish facilitator, in the sense that I think facilitation, well, my experience of it is it has even more benefit because it really requires, well, and again, on a support call with Hale at one time, the way I expressed it is it requires me to go into presence. And Hale corrected me to say, no, absence.
Yeah, I remember that call actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's it. So the only way that I can facilitate is by not being here.
Yeah, isn't that great? Yes, that's right. Because it's the absence
Right.
of us, right? We allow something else to come into the foreground more. Yeah.
Yes.
That's beautiful. Yes. That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, it is. And I kind of noticed a few years back, I needed to do a presentation that wasn't about the Sedona Method at all. And walking back from there, it had went well. And I realized that that's the kind of the same thing whenever you're doing a presentation that goes well, is the stepping back. Like you aren't there that I'm here delivering a speech or talking, but you are for the audience. And the kind of the more absent you are, the better it usually goes. And yeah, it's amazing the relief you get from not being you.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that, that cleanup or the pre-meeting procedure and the cleanup procedure that we have is such a gift. Right? A gift.
Yes.
A gift, right? Because it really, they both support dissolving that sense of me. And then there's just an openness to allowing life to happen for the unfolding and to show up as best one can, for the best and highest good of all, or with some ease and flow to support the flow that's already happening.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Actually, just to make it even clearer what you're saying, I think it's also interesting to look at the opposite of this, which is when you're completely in your head and, working on the basis of stories and strategies, So, for example, you mentioned public speaking. If you're standing up there trying to win the audience's approval and strategizing about what effect you will have by saying this or doing that, it's paralyzing.
Yes.
Right. Because you're no longer interacting with the people. You're interacting with the stories and the filters of the mind, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it also requires an enormous amount of trust, or if you will, a leap of faith, to really accept that you're able to say and do whatever is appropriate from moment to moment. It doesn't require planning. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. I was just going to ask you, but who's the one that's trusting and who's the one that's leaping?
Exactly.
Can you find the one?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, it's funny how I used to prepare all my kind of presentations really kind of, quite detailed. I wouldn't kind of go there kind of by heart, but kind of what comes afterward, etc. And then once I had a presentation coming and I thought that, it would be lovely to go there like Hale does, he doesn't really prepare that detailed way. He decides what he wants to, or a decision comes, what he wants to speak about, and then kind of speaking happens. And I thought, that would be lovely, but I'm not ready for that yet. And then I tried to do the kind of my usual preparations and practices, and I just couldn't, absolutely couldn't. I was stuck all the way through. And then I was like, okay, I got what I wanted. I have to go there without my detailed preparations. And I went there and I had up notes. I had the paper in my hand, so I waved it around, but I didn't even look at it. And I spoke whatever came up, and it was enough, and it was kind of what was needed that moment. But it was kind of, it feels almost like that the deeper you get into the method, the less you even can do the precise detailing about the method or presenting it. Like,
that's interesting. Can you say more about that, Katja?
about what?
What you just, yeah, exactly. Right? What did I just say? Right. That you're saying the longer that you've been releasing, the deeper you've gotten into the method, it gets harder to talk about maybe what would be considered introductory material. Did I hear that correctly?
Well, I can do that. Yes, it's but kind of like, if I try to plan ahead that, okay, I'll talk first about this, then about this, then I go to that way, that doesn't seem to work anymore. Like, I have to, exactly what Stephen said, allow the kind of it to happen and trust the process or life happening and unfolding as it needs to be, and let go of my wanting to control the situation beforehand.
Yes.
Because that's what it is, in a way, practicing and preparing.
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
Yeah. And along with that, I remember when I started noticing, maybe it was Hale that would say, oh, well, I guess that's apparently just what was meant to be happening. And it softens any sort of self-judgment, right? And of course, if there is a feeling like, oh, I should have, or, we can always release on that. But as you're saying, as releasing becomes more and more just part of who we are, or released, right? There's a sense that, oh, whatever thoughts I have about what just happened, they're just thoughts. They aren't necessarily the truth about what just happened. They're just about what happened.
Yes.
And I will admit, before I was introduced to releasing, self-judgment was huge. I was so critical of myself. And even through my years of releasing, right, that is something that has come up over and over again, to be a little kinder and gentler to the body mind called camp. Right? Right. So this allowing for spontaneity and an openness to everything is unfolding exactly as it's meant to, or it is just what is apparently happening, right, is really liberating. It's really liberating.
Yeah.
A further releasing question would be, can you find the one that needs to be kinder and gentler?
Right. There's just kindness and gentleness happening. I think I'm at this phase where it's this really interesting going back and forth between personhood, right? And then like absence. Right? Personhood.
So how do you now combine? You are working with clients, aren't you?
Yes.
And do you use this kind of, it's just what's apparently happening type of things with your clients, or do you stick to more basic ways of releasing? Or how do you, is there a rule, or you just let it
there's
happen?
no rule. I just let it happen. I just let it happen. But you know what? I would say that, and when I'm facilitating, a lot of times I don't have any idea what's going to happen or what's going to come out. There's just this unfolding. So sometimes there's all the different techniques might come out in one session. It just depends. Yeah. It's very spontaneous.
Yeah. So
you can trust that whatever needs to come up in the moment will appropriately. Yes.
Yeah. So how quickly did you start doing Sedona Method with clients? Did it come right away or?
Pretty much right away, because I found so much benefit. I found so much benefit for myself. I was feeling a lightness or an ease, and I really wanted other people to have that relief as well, right? And so because I was already instructing people in a Pilates studio, I worked with people on the thoughts and the feelings they had about their bodies. There was always plenty of things, right, to release about the thoughts and feelings about the body. And because of the nature of the way I worked with people one-on-one, very oftentimes in the studio, people would share about other aspects of their life. So it was just a natural, hey, would you like to learn a little bit about this method? I could just ask you a few questions, right? And let's see what happens. And the people who said yes, right, I would just facilitate them. And they came back and they said, wow, this is amazing. I've done like years and years and years of therapy, and I feel better in just like this one conversation with you, or a couple conversations with you than I have. It's not to say that the therapy wasn't valuable, of course, right? Honor and acknowledge that, but it had a really different focus. Right? And so in asking people the releasing questions, they felt a freedom. And so I said, wow, this is what I'd like to do next. So I ended up going to get a certification in coaching, and there wasn't a Sedona Method coach program at the time. So I found what felt like the closest thing, a methodology that was based on the premise that people are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's how it started. It just has gone on.
Yeah.
What I find interesting about what you just said is that, so I've never practiced Pilates, but what I understand is that it focuses on the core muscles of the body and strengthens those, correct?
Well, it's actually whole body movement. The whole idea of core is kind of a marketing thing that I don't know when that came about, but Mr. Pilates himself, he never talked about core. He talked about whole body movement, whole body breath, and breathing, right? And so kind of continuing this theme around wholeness. Like it was really looking at wholeness and the body in its wholeness, right? And I think that really fits, that way of thinking, continues to fit in. Now, I will say though, he called his methodology at the time contrology, or the study of control. So there is a lot about the Pilates method that is all about wanting control, and it's pretty simple, right? And I can look at that now, and I can love that. I can love that aspect of it without getting lost in wanting to control, right? But so there was an evolution where I got to a place where I need to move on from just teaching about physical movement, and was really interested in the more holistic, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual aspect of it, of life. Yeah. We didn't really speak to how you both came to the method. I'd love to hear how you both came to the Sedona Method, or how it came to you.
Katja?
Well, I was I've been studying using all sorts of modalities since I was 18, and they somehow always seem to be lacking something. And then when The Secret came out, the video, I got the DVD, and then I found the teachers in there, and Hale was there, but I didn't pick him up. But I found some people using EFT, and I was using EFT for 2-3 years, and I was quite pleased with that. And then the people, EFT people, were doing an interview with Hale, and it was like 30 minutes, I think, 20-30 minutes. And it was, like you said, Kim, the first time I heard it, I was like, wow, this is really something I have to learn some more. Then I ordered the book. I started reading the book, but I got stuck there somewhere because there are all these tick this and write this, and they just didn't work for me. And I thought it would be so much easier to hear this. So I ordered the Supercourse. And then after I got Supercourse, I was certain that, all the areas of life are in this course. So I don't need any other course ever again. Like, this is it. I'm happy with this for the rest of my life. Until I suddenly noticed I had signed up for the first retreat in Holland. And I went there. I actually could feel it physically opening up and getting deeper. But then I thought that, okay, I've been here now, and I now know how deep this can go. But why do these people come here again and again and again? I really thought that one retreat would be enough. Well, all of a sudden I came to the second 2 years later, and I found, it opens even deeper. And then I stopped kind of thinking that I've had enough, and I gave up. I'm just doing everything I can. So I haven't looked back, and I haven't really used much anything since this thing works. Yeah. So that's basically it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I had a similar, in the sense that when you recognize you could apply it to every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
You just take this one method and just keep going deep as you can. And it seems to be, there's always something happening. There's not stagnancy, in other words.
Yeah.
There's a flow that continues to deepen and widen in a really beautiful way.
And I must mention, it was only after my first retreat, I'd been using the method for 2 years by then. Then I got my first releasing partners, and that was again like opening up for like a whole new world. I did hate the partnerships at first, though. I thought they were awful. Yes, in the retreat.
What was hard? Yeah, what didn't you like about them? What was difficult or unlikable?
I was so nervous, like, can I pronounce the words right? Do I understand what they reply to me? How do I know if they've had enough time? Should I say the next question already? What I'm supposed to say when they ask me the questions? I was thinking in my head, and I didn't like it. But luckily, I went through that, and after we kind of got with the releasing partners into it, it's wonderful. It's just wonderful. Yeah. Wouldn't give it up now for anything. Yeah.
Oh, I can relate to what you just said, Katja. My first releasing partner, I was terrified. So I was releasing, my first partner was a woman, and for some reason, I just felt so self-conscious. And I mean, looking back now, it's pretty obvious. What it was is that I was too attached to the outcome.
Yeah.
You can't facilitate others if you're trying to get something or do something or accomplish something. It just, as soon as somebody feels there's an agenda, what happens? Resistance. And so
Yeah.
I would be kind of tiptoeing around, trying to facilitate, trying to do it right.
Yes.
And of course, that would just kick up her resistance immediately. And she would be challenging, asking questions. Could you do it this way? Could you do it? And that would, of course, make me even more self-conscious. And, honestly, I ended up crying after the first month. It was just, seriously, just like, I just couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
And I laugh now because at this point, I'm totally unattached to the outcome. In fact, I very often invite people, would you like to play with that? Because play, is all about no outcome for me anyway.
Yes.
It's just, let's just see what happens.
What helped you make that shift?
How did I make that shift?
Yeah, because I bet there might be people listening to this that can really relate to what we're talking about right now. Yeah.
Sure. Well, what really helped, so briefly, by the way, I started releasing in 2003, ages ago, and it experienced a lot of benefit, etc. But only in 2019, that's when my father was in the hospital all year, and we nearly lost him, and the family was coming together, and there was all kinds of stuff coming up. And so that's actually when I took the facilitator training course. Coincidentally. Is there such a thing as coincidence, right? And that's when I first started releasing with this first partner, just a one-on-one partnership. We would meet every week. But after that just fell apart, I had already discovered that there was a community, which we now call the releasing community, just people meeting online on WhatsApp and on Zoom, and I immersed myself in these people, in what was happening online. And in particular, it was the on-call releasing channel on WhatsApp. I would just throw myself out there 2, 3, 4 times a day, offering to facilitate. And because I just really felt the need. And that's how it worked for me. I found somehow, I can't tell you how the breakthrough happened or if there was a breakthrough, but there was that, and there was also the facilitation practice calls. And at this point, we're doing 5 such calls a week. But, people are getting together on Zoom, and, we break into pairs and facilitate each other. So for me, what it was is, like I said, just the persistence, just jumping into it and really, the shift didn't really happen overnight, but it just became evident that that's what was happening, that, releasing was happening, that somehow facilitation was becoming easier and easier. And that just became self-reinforcing, because it's a very joyful feeling to facilitate. It really truly is. Yeah.
That's so good. And, I think, we've heard Hale talk about how there's an acceleration, right?
Yes.
On many things on the planet, but also in the releasing community, and how things that people who've never experienced the Sedona Method or anything like it before are able to step in and literally immediately start feeling the benefits of releasing and deepen the practice so much more quickly than they did, 40 years ago or whatnot. And so what I feel is really exciting happening now is there's so much more visibility for the diversity of facilitation styles and personalities and techniques, like held together through this common methodology, right? We share this common ground with the Sedona Method, but our personalities, our styles, and just getting exposed to the great diversity has been incredibly enriching. I've really loved it. I think that has been huge in in expanding my ability as a facilitator and to release as well. Just seeing how there's many different ways and they all work.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that's being the beauty of partnerships is that when you are being facilitated, that you can't really know what the other person will ask you. Like when I really like to release on my own, but I do know what the next question is if I'm reading it or if I'm doing it in my head. But I can't know what the other person will ask me. But then again, the beauty is when you are asking, you don't know what the next question is either. So it's kind of a dance, really kind of a beautiful way. And I agree with Kim about it's lovely to see different ways. And that's one of the reasons these conversations, I think, are so beautiful, because people even practice the method by themselves differently, and they have different paths and different insights, and sometimes they kind of evoke something new in you. Oh, I could try that, or I never thought of using it that way. So it's
so true. It's so true. I want to build on what you said about not knowing what the next person is going to say. And I think there's something about that not knowing. There's a aliveness, right?
Yes.
There's just a full curiosity and openness for life to come through that moment. It's fresh, right? It's really, really beautiful. It's really beautiful.
It is. And how do you practice yourself these days? You have releasing partners, so you have a daily practice, or?
Yeah, I definitely have releasing partners, and for exactly the reasons that you said are incredibly helpful. Something we haven't mentioned yet that I don't know if anybody else has done this, so I'll mention it, is sometimes I'll record myself reading a release, and then I will listen to the voice of Kim.
Oh, yeah.
doing a group release. Right. And I sometimes find I have found that to be really supportive, that in the moment I'm perhaps in a situation or there's a noticing of something coming up. And then there's literally sometimes that voice that there it is. It just appears, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's Kim's voice, my releasing partner's voice, or somebody's voice I heard, or like another instructor, Hale, David Elsie, Susan, Tim or Annie, it could be, they just pop up. It's wonderful.
I'd never thought about recording my own releases and listening to them. I thought that's interesting what you said.
Yeah. I remember the first time I did the cleanup procedure on Kim. Wow. That was really. Did Kim try to control Kim? Heck yeah.
Right. All the time.
Yeah, and could that be really? Right. So I remember, that was years ago. That was it was. I had a lot of fun with that one for quite a while. But yeah, give it a go. Try recording your own voice. Right?
Yeah. That is, I usually make notes whenever I'm taking a course or retreat, like my favorite things, and I have a few notebooks filled with those things. And at one point I thought that, okay, I've done this, I'm only rewriting the same things, but I'm not actually. And I really like the thing that I can open up it random at anywhere and just see what catches my eye, and it's usually something helpful. And there are the kind of things that were speaking to me already, so it's not like I'm not writing everything is said and heard. So
yes, you are inspiring me to go back, because I do that same thing, Katja. And I have all these stacks of notes
You
and
must
downloads.
have lots of them.
And so I was thinking it would be really good to get that in a place, and then just like, that could be a really great practice, you know, every morning, just randomly pick something, open it up, and just see what presents itself.
Yeah.
For the day. That's actually fun. I think I might take that on. That's one of my takeaways from this call.
Oh, good.
Maybe
Good.
I'll start doing that.
Yeah. So since you are having clients and you're doing releasing on your own, so do you ever find it difficult to combine, or is there a difference the way your kind of professional Kim is to your personal Kim releaser, as a releaser? I don't know if that question makes sense.
Can you ask that question in a different way?
Is it kind of easy for you to combine, like you do releasing, you facilitate people all day long? Maybe this is what I wanted to ask. It's like, do you ever feel tired of releasing afterwards and think that, okay, I don't need to release anymore, I've done it all day? Or do you still feel like, oh, I could do a clean up or release on this or that on your free time?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question. And because my career and the types of things that I'm doing for work, right, or projects I'm involved in have really evolved in the last 6 years quite a bit. And releasing is always, it feels like it's a foundational, practice in my personal life, and it weaves in professionally as well. Like in my own coaching practice, I do a lot of facilitation. I've worked in programs where I've been a mindset coach, and so the people going through the program get a couple of sessions with me as the mindset coach in the program. And there are periods of time, especially like during COVID, where I was facilitating quite a bit. And so because I was facilitating quite a bit, I was quite released. Because I do the cleanup procedure, pre-meeting and cleanup procedure. So there was a lot of releasing happening, right? So not so much. But then did I feel like I needed to necessarily release a lot afterwards? But then something like has shifted, and I'm like stretching into some different areas around leadership, around some societal impact related projects, things related to social identities. And clearly that's absolutely what I need to bring up what's more in me about the things and the stories that my mind uses to create a separate individual. And so it's interesting. I call it the slingshot. I feel I'm getting stretched, and sometimes it feels like I'm going backwards. Like, wow, that feels really personal. Wow, there's a lot of feelings coming up, a lot of thoughts. There's a lot of identification, right? But I hold that lightly as this is one, it's just what's apparently happening, for work. How grateful I am I have the Sedona Method tool and a community of support. I was just telling my partner the other day, I feel so lucky and blessed that I have this wonderful community that I can reach out to for support especially when things as a person feel really intense and sometimes just pretty darn yucky, right? And facing, allowing these beliefs, right, that the mind has used to create that separate individual that I can see now were influencing and filtering how I saw the world, how I showed up in the world, but wasn't really prepared to do anything about that because I was just in a survival mode on certain things, right? And so now it feels like after doing this for such a long time, this topic of separation and the separate individual, and allowing that feeling to be just a feeling, right? Without stepping over it. You know, I remember hearing conversations on retreats that people would have about, I wish I could just jump the puddle. I really don't, like, oh man, this is like really yucky and it's really hard, right? And I do remember Hale saying, yeah, we all wish we could jump the puddle, right? But that's not how it works, right? Right. And sometimes I think, well, unless you do, but that hasn't been my experience, right? So like my group coaching program that I developed was really to support people in allowing their stories, right? Allowing whatever story there is that is causing pain and suffering, sense of limitation, to be welcomed, to be allowed, and to use that story as a threshold or a portal for releasing, right? And so when we allow the stories to come up, right, and use the releasing and welcome, allowing, noticing, right, any wanting, noticing that it feels really personal, right, that in using the techniques, right, something is revealed, right? We can't, it's so, right, that we have pointer words, right? The empty fullness that already is, right? The freedom that is already, the love that is already, right? The source of happiness and joy that is already, right? Becomes revealed, right? But for me, in my experience, it's, I think I maybe took when Hale said Lester used every down as an opportunity, right? I really embraced that. And like, oh boy, have I had a lot of downs, right? Not that I went looking for them, right? But they're, you know, just continuing to embrace whatever's happening in life as the opportunity, right? And that stretch, I remember first hearing, like, you have to let go of even those feel-good feelings. I was like, oh, what? Right, but now I understand. It doesn't mean that you're shunning the feel-good feelings, right? Right? It's like there's just like, this is just what's apparently happening in this moment, right? And there's a welcoming, there's an allowing of whatever it is that's happening in this story of life, the experience of life, right? And whatever is apparently happening is an invitation to welcome what's beyond the thoughts and feelings, what's beyond, as what's already here, the freedom that already is.
There's something that you said, I think it's so important. You know, so often we feel like when things are coming up, when there's difficulty, when there's challenges, that we're failing, that we're not releasing well enough, that we're just not, you know, far enough along. Because of course, if we were better releasers, then we wouldn't be feeling these things, correct? No.
Yes, that
actually was reframing that as a sign of progress and success. Oh, wow, things are getting challenging. I must be doing something right.
Because you know,
I'm on the right track.
Yes, because you know what happened for me, like I mentioned earlier, I had some really, really big challenges. The Sedona Method came into my life as I was entering in how I describe it as all the unsustainable patterns that were running in my life were literally reaching their breaking point. Right? Relationships that were not mutual were falling apart, right? And so, it's like, oh, am I failing? Well, at the time it was like really horrible. There's lots of feelings, wanting security coming up for sure, right? All the wanting to be separate, wanting to be one, right? All those wants, they were so intense. But when I look back, truly the certain ways that I was living, like how I was like using my energy to try to accomplish certain things, they were really not sustainable. The relationships that were not mutual fell apart, right? And just to keep releasing and keep going, right? The relationships that I have now, oh boy, like it's so wonderful to know what mutual, respectful, loving relationships are like. It's wonderful. So that's what I'm like, the slingshot, right? Sometimes it feels like you're going backwards, but what happens with the slingshot, right? You get stretched and it's really uncomfortable. You feel like you're going backwards. And then what's the key? You let go. And then that thing in the slingshot, like the person or the person's life, whatever, goes, way forward. And I see that with clients over and over and over again. And sometimes I'm marveling, like, wow, you let that go really quickly. It took me years. Right? So that was one of the things I mean about the acceleration that I'm seeing compared to 10 years ago. Right? I'm just seeing this acceleration in people's willingness to release and welcome life as it is, to really welcome the empty fullness where all things are possible, the willingness to not know, right? Because when you don't know, there's unlimited possibilities. It's only our knowing how things are going to be that limit us, right? So I just see that more and more with people, just this willingness and openness.
I think the pandemic was a very, very important moment. Well, for me personally, but I think for us, for humanity, what I noticed is, well, first of all, my releasing practice just accelerated during the pandemic. But in part because, of course, one thing I noticed was that the pandemic didn't really affect me so much. My life circumstances are different. I'm not, raising children and working a remote job. So, there's that. But also, it just didn't feel as real and threatening to me as it seemed to be for so many other people. So the pandemic sort of showed me, if you will, what gains I had, I was enjoying from releasing. It just put it all in contrast. But also during the pandemic, it really felt, it was the strangest thing, but I felt a sense of the collective suffering, like the great human animal was wounded and fearful. You could feel this, everybody, and so I noticed in myself, but also in many other people, we were kind of rallying to each other online to support each other and to support others.
I love that. That I have to say, I have received so many pearls from listening to, like, going on retreats, and really I just want to thank Hale for all the things that he shared, because one of the things he said that has always stuck with me is, instead of putting your energy into what you're against, put your energy to what you're for. And what you just said, Stephen, to me was reflective. We were for caring for other humans, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm loving about what's happening here in the releasing community, is we're for connection. We're for supporting each other. We're for, like, even more transparency and learning and growing together as a community. At least for me, that's what this is. Right?
Yes.
And I think coming back to what we spoke about, kind of stepping back and being absent when you're facilitating, I think this is what makes this more powerful than so many other modalities that also want to help, because in them there's this idea that there are people who help other people because the other people need help. Whereas in this, we have this kind of we don't put ourselves that we are better, or we might we have been doing this for a longer time, but like Kim, you both said, people are releasing so much quicker these days. So
yes,
it's just that there's this, and not wanting to control the outcome, so it makes it even more powerful. So I think that's the uniqueness and beauty of this thing.
Oh, yes. I just got chills. So I'd love to speak a little bit more about that, because that's really present for me in some of my other work that I'm doing on like some of the societal impact work, where, you know, I have this vision, right? Because, you know, some of my social identities, right? It could be said, and I've had direct experience, you know, my mind could make up the evidence for times where I've been marginalized, where I've been mistreated, right? Because of things related to gender, race, or culture, right? Whatnot. And, you know, but really, I would probably say everyone on the planet has probably had the experience of feeling marginalized in some way, of not being seen for who you truly are, right? And then we lose sight of, or we could rephrase that to say, then sight is lost of what truly is and what we are, right? But what I see the method as being so powerful, right? As some of the people I work with are getting in touch with anger about being mistreated, right? And injustices that have been done to them for whatever the situation is, right? There could be so many different situations where somebody else's behavior got interpreted as, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I'm invisible, I'm not worthy, right? That's kind of the bottom line piece, right? And so there could be a variety of feelings, and for a lot of people, anger doesn't feel safe. But the Sedona Method has ways and tools to work with any emotion, and especially anger, right? And to be held by a facilitator, right? If we're talking person to person, right? There's that empowerment that people choose, right? Do I want to hold on? Do I want to let go? What do I notice, right? There's this curiosity that supports this untangling in such a gentle, respectful, right?
yes,
With dignity, like when it's held as that feelings aren't facts, right? That there is this empty fullness in which all comes and goes, that all can stand in their dignity. All are part of their own path to empowerment. Speaking from the person, right? Supported by life, supported by, right? And as I'm talking, it's like, yeah, I'm at this interesting phase to recognize that even the feeling of not enough, right? I know this is kind of that stretch thing, that even that feeling is freedom too, in the sense that it just is energy or something that's appearing in and on that empty fullness, right? But in terms of improving, like introducing that to people whom this is new, right? Hey, there's nothing wrong with like discovering the freedom that these thoughts and feelings don't have to constrict you, you.
yes, right.
They don't have to constrict life from moving through that body mind. Right.
Right. And I think that the most, as you were saying that, what was coming through for me was the phrase unconditional acceptance.
Yes.
I think in some ways this is the bedrock of the method, that no matter what you're feeling, no matter what you're experiencing, thinking, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's all right. Because it's not, because in its essence, it's not you. So when you talk about the empty fullness, for some people that might be a little abstract if they haven't really, because that's an experiential thing.
Yes, that's right. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Right.
But I think there's also what I've noticed in this journey, right? Especially with what I'll say with people who live, it could be described as, right? And I'm not saying this is the truth, but this is how we can describe it as people who live and have to work in systems that feel oppressive.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it may be for multiple different reasons. Right. But when there's that unconditional acceptance, right, it opens, right, because that unconditional acceptance is a synonym of love, right? Then the person, right, there is that for the person, but that becomes the portal or the doorway to what's all that appears in and on, right? Like that, it's so much, it is the person, but it's bigger than the person, right? I know I'm not really putting this to words very well, but what I've noticed is that it's really helpful, right, as we go through the steps to, I for me, and maybe it's just where I'm at still in my process, is allowing that for the personhood is so powerful, because a lot of people maybe have never felt that, right, as the person, right?
Never felt what? The unconditional acceptance.
Unconditional acceptance, right?
Yes, exactly.
To have had, like, if there was something that really felt like there was an injustice, right, done, and to be seen, to have that story seen and heard, right, that's welcomed, right? There's a quieting and a calming that then supports going even deeper with the method. That's beautiful. It's really, really beautiful.
Yes, I had the experience, just to riff off what you just said. A friend of mine went through a whole series of personal tragedies and disasters, and it's not worth actually outlining the whole thing. Lost his job, his girlfriend, his health, his apartment, and everything else. Moved in with his mother. Pandemic kicks in. Now he's locked in with his mother, who is, it turns out, in the early stages of dementia. Is that enough? So he was, throughout the pandemic, absolutely, he was freaking out. And he was calling me at least once a day. I couldn't always pick up. But he was entirely resistant to any kind of releasing, any kind of therapy, any kind of spirituality, he didn't want to face his feelings. He wasn't ready for that. I couldn't lead him through any of the Sedona Method questions. Nevertheless, I was prepared to listen for an hour or 2 hours per week, kind of a thing. And I think just that actually was massively beneficial, just to allow him to be as crazy and broken as he appeared to be, and yet, okay.
Yeah. Yes.
You're still here. I know you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like this. Yeah. Just that little tiny bit can be enormously beneficial, I think. Yeah.
Yes, that is so powerful. So powerful. And so actually, if it's all right with you, I mean, I'd like to just even offer this as a gift to any listener. You can find me on my website, kimmoriyama.com, and you can do just a a free 30-minute, and I'd be happy to do just that with you.
We'll make sure we put the links in the description
Yeah.
of the video below.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
Yeah, just as a free complimentary, let's share a story and use the story as a portal to discover the freedom that already is, already, with lots of love and unconditional acceptance as the foundation of our conversation.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful.
We could wrap it up at that.
It seems like
what else?
Yeah.
What else is there to say?
ending with love and unconditional acceptance and the freedom that is already. Pretty good. Oh, you both
Yes.
are such beautiful friends. I'm just so grateful. Truly, I'm really grateful for the community that we have and your roles in taking us to the next level of connection. It's wonderful.
It's just unfolding. We are all part of it. Thank you for coming up. This has been wonderful. Sure we didn't end up the conversation ball from this, but I think this is good for now. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Mwah.
Okay, there we go. Just a second.